Today on Gritty, we talk about an insidious, silent killer, a life-sucking force that people naively and foolishly welcome into their lives, a life-wrecking force that the fast-changing modern age has thrust upon the modern human mind. This insidious killer is stress. Today, I'm joined by the deep-thinking, intense, and amazing Dr. Hilary Lampers. She explains stress in clinical and colloquial terms. She talks about how our bodies and brains are all that we really have, and how we should treat them. Human beings have evolved to thrive under stress. We need stress, but today's modern stress is different. It's a different animal from the kind of stress human beings have evolved to handle. On today's episode, find out these differences and how to live better. You can learn more from Dr. Hilary's website, huntharvesthealth.com. This is part 2 of 2.
If you want to increase your testosterone, if you want to increase your muscle mass, if you want to decrease your anxiety,
badass,
you have to sleep.
Yeah.
So the research coming out on sleep deprivation is really bad, and people need to sleep, and most people are sleep deprived. And we know that you secrete all your healthy hormones at night, and your nervous system basically revitalizes itself. It actually cleans itself out at night. There's this new lymphatic system within the central nervous system called the glymphatic system that is cleaning your brain out while you sleep.
Yep. I have goals for certain things, and then I hit those things and they're prioritized, and the stuff that doesn't work, it's just gone. And being able to give myself permission has been hugely liberating. And now I walk around going, yep, I'm just letting it go. And I'm much more adept at dropping things out of my life that are wonderful things that would add a lot of value to my life, but I just can't do it all.
I think, too, we want to remember that because we have that cerebral cortex, we have the ability to make choices that can train us to feel like that, to realize you've trained yourself to realize, okay, there's nothing I can do about that. Training yourself not to go, and then die. And that could be a really hard learning curve, but we have the ability to do that. And I think that where a lot of people get stuck is they don't really know where to start because they're just doing what they've always done. And it's really hard, maybe without direction or mentorship or somebody in your life that's been very successful at it, to know how to do that. And especially if you're taking after, most people take after somebody else. So if your dad was like this type A driven, just going, and that's how you are, that's what you think is normal. You think that's how you're supposed to be, to you're just being who you are.
Yeah.
And genetics plays a role, all these things play a role, your environment plays a role. But ultimately, if you realize it's a problem in your life and it's creating stress in your life and you feel it in your body, because you can feel chronic stress in your body. There's a whole new kind of thing of medicine coming out about, what we call neuroinflammation, and it's actually inflammation of the brain. And a lot of it comes from external things, from these excessive stress hormones, from our gut barrier not working well, what we ingest into our bodies, and the neurochemicals that are being produced when you even just think about stressful situations. And all of those things can cause inflammation of your brain, and basically over time create diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, dementias, all these things. Yeah. And so I think, you do have the choice to try to stop that. And it does take some training. I
agree. I give my wife, I tease her a lot because her stress management skills are super pathetic. And so they're no good, they're weak. And so I spend a lot of time employing what I've my stress management skills, which I've learned to develop over time, and I'm pretty good about it. And I have to set her down, go through these exercises, work her way down into this point where she's not stressed anymore. And it really is a skill. It's an important skill, I think, that all humans should spend time working on and developing. And stress management can change your life. It can, because it is a killer. It is the
number one killer right now in Americans. It's the number one killer is chronic stress. And people say, how's that possible? Well, go read Robert Sapolsky's book, Zebras don't get ulcers, and you will see every single system within your body and how chronic stress affects it. If you have too much excess cortisol, which is a stress hormone secreted by your adrenals under stress, under sympathetic stress, you secrete cortisol. That's what gets you out of bed in the morning is cortisol, right?
You want
to
it.
see that high in the morning. If you have chronic secretion of cortisol over long periods of time when you shouldn't, you will lose bone mass. Okay? So your body knows if you got all this excess cortisol around, eventually it'll start affecting other systems. Your bones will get brittle, osteoporosis. Like chicks like me should be the last people stressing out because white, skinny, small women get osteoporosis. And why is that? Who knows? But I should be the last person to be creating excess stress hormone because my chances of getting osteoporosis will or osteopenia, which is the beginning of significantly go up. So I should know better. What am I stressing out for? Like I'm going to cause myself to be all hunched over and, but I think it's like most people don't know.
It's the silent killer, right? It's like sneaking up on you all day, every day. You have to actually. So you have to actually recognize
cardiovascular system. Yes. And so what kills more people? Cardiovascular disease. Is it because your cholesterol's high? No. This is all becoming out in science now that, your cardiovascular system, you develop plaques in your arterial wall from excess cholesterol in the blood, but it's not necessarily because your cholesterol is high. It's because you have a crap ton of inflammation going on in your body. Well, why do you have a crap ton of inflammation going on in your body? Because your body is secreting inflammatory molecules, and a lot of them are created by stress. And so those inflammatory molecules destroy the arterial lining. And what is cholesterol doing? Cholesterol is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to plug up those holes just like a caulk in a wall with the, or when you have a hole in your wall, you put the plaster or caulking or whatever it is to plug up the hole. That's what cholesterol is doing. So it's not cholesterol that's evil here. It's the inflammation. It's the chronic stress. It's the bad diet.
Well,
it's all these things that are making it worse. So
one thing I'll say is, when Suzanne got cancer, you can kind of mark in our lives, like from the time she got cancer to today, like a stark difference in how we live in every aspect. Because when you experience something like that, I think, all of a sudden, what's really important to you, what really matters in life, boils down very quickly in that one moment where you're like, you have cancer. It's like, well, all that stuff that really matters to you becomes super clear, and all the stuff that's not important to you becomes really clear. And all of a sudden, stress management to me in so many ways was pretty easy to grasp. Like, and you start to wonder, what am I living my life for? And what if it all went away tomorrow? Like, what is it that matters to me? And I think when you are faced with things like that, it's actually, in many ways, it's just a blessing because it gives you a chance to get out of the hamster wheel and actually make the life that you want. And I travel and I get on an airplane and I'm on a bush plane and I'm going into the mountains in Alaska and I'm thinking, this could be my last airplane ride because some of that stuff's freaky. Like our plane hit a tree, our wing hit a tree branch I wasn't in the plane. I just got out, but I saw the pilot clip it off and I'm like, he could have been all she wrote for him.
Those guys are crazy though. See, those guys they don't have the worrier gene. So those guys that fly those planes, they don't get excess adrenaline. They need to do that to get adrenaline. And so I think, and like you and I, we already have enough adrenaline. Like we don't need to be flying planes like that. Yeah.
But I sit there and I get in these things and I'm in these kind of semi-dangerous places where, it's important to me that I'm here for my kids as they're getting older and that they have a father and that I reach old age and that I'm there to mentor and bring them along. And I don't want to leave my wife alone at home. And at the same time, I take calculated risks all the time because to me, it's part of living life and having experiences and feeling alive. But I've built and designed my life in a way that if I were to be gone tomorrow, and it was over, did I leave behind what I wanted to leave behind? Am I ready for today to be the day? And I try to wake up each day with that in mind. Am I ready for today to be the day? And part of that goes back to the stress management, accepting my limitations and saying, yeah, I did good enough. Like I've got things in order. I've got the life insurance. I got this done. I got that done. These things are in place. And I've tried to make that difference in the world that I feel is a responsibility I feel compelled to do. And so I feel like living with that every day it's easier for me to get on the bush plane and being okay with accepting my own death if it were to happen.
Yeah.
And
I think if everybody woke up every day and you thought to yourself every day, oh, I have cancer today and I want to live another day. What are the things that I need to do to make sure that this cancer doesn't grow, And unfortunately, our brains don't work like that unless we have been pushed with that stressor in the past. For some reason, it's just so interesting that it's the stress of a situation sometimes that is the only thing that will change us, right?
Yeah.
So the diagnosis of a cancer or a terminal disease or somebody in our life dying or something tragic happening.
I think about someone in the military. Every day they're going out and they're getting shot at, and they have friends around them that are dying every week, and they know that it could be their number this next time they go out every time, but they find a way to accept that. And I think it's a huge level of stress reduction to realize that you're okay with who you are and what you've done, and that if today's the day, it's the day. And I think, but don't get me wrong, it wasn't the day. When I found out Suzanne had cancer, I was not ready. Things were not what I wanted it to be. And that made things really scary for me and really hard. And so getting yourself into that place in life where you can say that about yourself, I think is a big place to be, an important place to get.
Yeah. So, the truth is that we are not immortal, and that we have a very short time, really, whatever our time is, some of us shorter than others. And, it's important to really know ourselves and how we function, and then learn what are the things that we need to do to just create a quality of life, because we don't really know our quantity of life. We don't know how long we're going to be here. And so that's, I think, what I've strived to do my entire life, or my career in the last 25 years is to help people understand that it's quality, really, and that the essential things of life, it's like you can't ignore them. They have to happen in order for you to live a quality of life. And we're all going to have bad days. Not everybody wakes up every day feeling great, especially if you're a woman and you have like estrogen and progesterone, you go through menopause, you have babies. Like, women are complex for a reason. I don't know what happened with Eve in the garden, but man, she screwed us, because we have definitely a lot more going on in our bodies than men do. So you guys tend to have more consistency throughout your entire life, but we do see andropause and those things happen in men. And we're seeing it now because of our toxic exposures. Men are your guys' hormones and your stress systems, because that part of the brain is also very influenced by toxic exposures and stuff. And so we are seeing, I think, a rise in stress, in chronic stress, as well as testosterone deficiency and other insulin resistance and all these things, because we are having a lot of toxic exposure that we don't really even understand. And so we don't realize, we don't see it. So we don't think it's there, but it is. And, but I think that, our lifetimes are going to change. We're going to have many different cycles, and not every day is going to be perfect. And not every day are you going to wake up feeling like I'm going to conquer the world. And not every day are you going to wake up happy and thankful and have gratitude that, you know, you don't just make $1 a day. But I can say that if most of the time that you're thinking about yourself in a way that you know that you want to have a quality of life, you know, those other days you can give yourself a break, you know, like it is really about, sometimes you just have to give yourself a break. You just have to be like, all right, I'm not doing jack today. I am not going to that list. I'm not even looking at it. I'm not answering an email.
I'm pretty good at that, Hillary. I've gotten pretty good at that. That's what you need. And so I think you've trained yourself pretty well to do that. You know, I think that really it just comes down to, for me, you know, health is like waves in an ocean. Things come in and they'll go out. You'll have incidences happen that aren't good, and you'll have amazing things happen to you that change your life and change your perspective. And I think we need to hold on to those waves. You know, we need to surf those waves that bring that perspective in, that can really kind of shape us and help us to learn. And I think that so
I don't think that's a selfish thing.
It's interesting you brought up the women and Adam and Eve and stuff, and a little joke there, because I listened to Jordan B. Peterson talk about the psychological significance of the biblical stories in the Old Testament. And he was talking about Adam and Eve and stuff. It was pretty interesting, but he's talking about women, and they tend to be higher in negative emotion than men do. And he was explaining that, you know, for women, their upper body strength is far inferior to like that of a male. Plus, you know, he's like, why would we think that women are adapted for their own nervous systems, like the way that men seem to be? Like, and the way he was describing it was like, women rear children. So why wouldn't they be adapted to be rearing children almost as much as they are for themselves? Because human beings have children that take a long time to raise. Like we're one of those species, I forget what you call it, where the babies take forever to become independent. What's that called? Do you know? It's there's not very many animals in the world where that's the case, but it takes humans many, many years to develop, right?
Oh, I see. So our offspring it takes them a very long time to become adults.
Exactly.
So we have many years where we have to nurture and take care of them.
Exactly.
They're I'm not sure what the word is.
They're highly weak, highly, dependent on the mother, protecting them, feeding them, getting them, because they have a big brain they got to develop. It takes a long time, you know. They have like, we don't even have fur on our bodies, right? Like we have like this delicate skin that can be cut open very quickly and easily. Like we're very weak when it comes to like animals in the animal kingdom, right? If you compare us to like that.
Our children, their brains don't even develop till you're 25 and so he's like, under the age of 2, like you're totally dependent on everything.
So he's like, not only is a woman like in danger of being hurt by a stronger male, they also have within them not just physical danger, but also sexual. Like there could be they're at risk of being violated in that way as well.
Right.
Plus, you add to it that they have to take care of these very weak, pathetic, like offspring for a very long period of time. So they're constantly on edge, constantly, you know, having to deal with the risks associated with having this offspring, right? So they tend to have a little more like baggage and emotion that comes with all of that, because
hormonal
they have to be hyper aware and hyper vigilant and paying attention, and they have to be highly stressed or their kids are going to die. Where you leave a kid with a dad and he's like, mom's like, where's the kid? And the dad's like, they were here a minute ago. What was a minute ago? I saw them an hour ago. Where did they go?
Here's the deal. Women's brains have a bigger corpus callosum, okay? So the corpus callosum is the middle part of your brain that connects the left and the right side. The bigger corpus callosum means there's more neural signals going between both sides of the brain, which means women can multitask. Men don't multitask very well. And a perfect example of this is rearing children. So women can be like, I could be podcasting with you right now, doing dishes, taking care of my kids, changing a diaper, and cooking up some dinner, and having a conversation with Ryan all at the same time. And my brain is actually picking up every single one of those things.
I do not have those skills at all.
So men don't have that. And this is why when women get frustrated and they seem more crazy and hormonal, it's because, let's say you work all day and it's daddy's day off and he's got the kids all day. So you leave the house in the morning, there's dishes all over the counters, there's food all over, there's laundry strewn across the floor in the bed, there's books and diapers and whatever else. And you leave and you think, all right, when I get home, this will all be cleaned up, right? Mm-hmm. You don't say it, you just think it, because in your mind, in your world, that would all be cleaned up. That would be, by the time your husband got home, he would walk into this clean house this serene environment.
I even noticed that in the corporate world, where there were some gals I worked with that could do like 4 things at the same time. And I was not like that. I was like, I'm doing this, and when this is over, I'll do the next thing. And when this is over, I'm not doing them all simultaneously. Otherwise, I drop all the balls I'm juggling.
No, so here's the deal. That woman comes home from work now 10 hours later, let's say. Daddy's had the kids all day. You walk in the house. It is literally as if nothing has happened. You are in a time warp. You are now going, did I just leave this house? Because everything that's in there is in the exact same place. No diapers have been moved. No dishes have been put away. The laundry is still in a pile. And what is your husband doing? He's sitting there with the kids, and he's like, hi. And you're like, well, what did you do today? Oh, I played with the kids. Did you do anything else? Well, no, I played with the kids. And this is where women, we just, again, our corpus callosum is now firing. Bam, 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 bam. Like, what is wrong with you? You can't clean this house and take care of these kids at the same time? No, I can't. And you know what? It's not really that important, right? Like, a clean house is not as important as playing with my kids or ignoring my kids, whatever the dad does, right? Watching movies all day while the kid's drinking juice boxes out in the other room.
One thing at a time.
Right. We don't like play with the kids and not play with the kids at the same time. We make sure those are separate activities. But, women just, and this I think is partially too why women tend to be more stressed out. We tend to have more depression. We tend to have more anxieties. Mm-hmm. And it is the
I think men tend to have
fluctuations
more rage.
we deal with. Well, men have more rage. Yeah, for sure. Because testosterone by nature is, why do you think they send 18-year-old men to war and traditionally not 18-year-old women? It's just, and most 32 to 42-year-old men are not going to go to war either. They're like, what? Are you kidding me? No. So that's why they're picking young men to go into these very high stress situations, because that's the peak of your testosterone. You are like going to conquer the planet and you're going to win. You don't really think about death. That's not really on your radar. So you're kind of immortal. But women do have these complexities that play in. And so every time, like creating a plan for men, like a testosterone plan is like actually easy. Because you guys really aren't that complicated. You can be. But when I think about creating a plan for women, it's a lot more complicated. Women are just hormonally a lot more complicated.
Yeah, when I
we have a lot more cycles in our lives.
When I listen to your podcast,
that men don't have.
When I listen to your podcast on women and women's hormones versus men and women, it just gets so complicated.
Did I have a podcast on women's hormones?
Well, you just talked about hormones in general, and the female part came up, and it's like, it just got brushed over because,
And I think men are scared of this. I think a lot of men, like, their eyes kind of go glassy and big when women start talking about hormones because, women do a lot of things men don't do throughout their life. And if, like I said, we kind of got screwed in all the things we have to do that you don't have to do. But, there's a reason for that. And I think sometimes it's like, if you've ever had a moment with your wife where you're like, what in the hell? was this creator thinking. Men and women are supposed to live together. My mom always has this saying, because she's been divorced twice. And, she's like, listen, men and women should just live on two separate islands. They can meet in the middle in a boat once in a while, and then they can just go back to their islands, because the women can live on an island with all their other women and children and dance around and sing and cook and have a great time. Yeah. And men can go back to their brooding, fighting, I'm going to be a man island and be by themselves. And, obviously that may be testament to the men my mother married, but she's kind of right, because the women's stress systems are built more for that tend and befriend. Mm-hmm. Men are more built for the fight or flight. And that kind of makes it hard hormonally for men and women to always get along in how they think and how they perceive. And, we're totally different creatures. So
I think it's been interesting. I agree 100%. I think that when you bring in consciousness, like you were talking about the cerebral cortex or whatever, where humans are a little different than your typical animal, right? And we don't have that reptilian brain anymore. I think that's where, because what makes sense from a nature perspective in a lot of ways is to get a woman pregnant and then leave, not get her pregnant and stay. But from a psychological perspective, there's a lot of value with conscious thought, I think, and consciousness in the two staying together. And it's like you have these two worlds of conscious thought combined with this reptilian world, and they kind of come together in humanity in a way that's just more complex and different. It's not like.
We are in a totally new age too for men. I think that, like my grandparents and even my father's day, men were not really required to do a lot of the things that they are now in a family situation. And I think this is a new couple generations for men where they're learning that they are the breadwinners, maybe not fully. Their wife works now too, but they also need to be a part of their children's lives, and they're becoming the 50-50 parent. And some men are not working full-time jobs, and they're home half the time, and they're cooking and they're cleaning. And I mean, gosh, Ryan's a Betty Crocker, regular Betty Crocker, he may not clean the house like I want it, but he gardens and cooks and hunts and takes the kids, and he's a 50-50 parent. And, his dad wasn't like that. His dad wasn't like that.
Right.
And he's just realized that he wants to be part of that. And that's a new thing for you guys. That really is, you
look at the 50s and today.
Were not, I mean, my grandma is like, your husband is doing the dishes?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Different world.
Like, did you train him? No. I mean, so I think that women, if you're in a healthy relationship and you're with a man who is trying to do all these things too, we also have to give credit to him, because he may not have been raised like that. He may have not had any mentorship like that about being, a 50-50 parent and taking on the emotional aspect now of the family, where it used to be before it was that mainly provider role. And now he's not only the provider, he has to be the emotional backbone of the family, and he has to be in all these different things. And so I do think that there is a learning curve for men there, and it can be difficult. It can be difficult for them because they may not have had that mentorship to know that. But I think we're coming into a new age. It's really exciting for men that they get to be more part of the family, and that they can experience those things that, like maybe my grandfather didn't get to experience because he was working all the time, and he wasn't forced to really be active in his children's lives unless, my dad was playing baseball or something. But I think that there is kind of this new dawn of fatherhood. And
so I agree.
Anyways.
So tell me about so let's
talk about some things to help.
Yeah, let's wrap up our stress discussion here. What are some things that you would just a real quick list of just some things that wrapping up today's talk that people should take away from this show today?
So obviously the first thing that I stated earlier would be get to know yourself. I would say, if you want to talk in medical terms, maybe know your numbers, get to know your genetics, do some testing on yourself, and learn about yourself. If you've got emotional and mental issues around certain situations or stressors, you have triggers, get help for those things. That's by far the number one most important thing, because you can't take yourself into a situation with your spouse or your family unless you have worked on yourself and you figured these things out for yourself. So I would say that would be number one. And sometimes for men, that's really difficult to do. You know, women are much better at asking for help, I think, at least from healthcare providers. Men, it takes a while, and this is probably why we see men dying of things earlier than women. That's why your your life insurance is more expensive than your wife's life insurance, because you guys die earlier, and maybe it's just because you don't ask for as much help. But I think sometimes these things can help you understand yourself. And so diving into those kind of more medical side of things and figuring that out, obviously figuring out any health conditions you have, and any symptoms that you may be experiencing, you know, not just letting these things go, especially if they're long-term. And that would mean if you're having those things, addressing what are those areas in your life that are causing you the stress. That making that list is really the first essential thing. Even if you're going to go to your doctor, it's helpful to have a list, because I don't live with you. I don't know what you're doing.
And I think that list extends beyond your physical being as well.
It's everything.
To me, it's
like, what's the mental, emotional?
What are all the things that you feel you need to knock out or do what are all, just the list of all the things that give you anxiety, and just make that list. And that can be physical. It can be emotional, it can be spiritual, it can be relationships, it can be a lot of things. But getting that, I think, identified is a big part of eliminating stress, is identifying what it is that's stressing you out.
Right. And once you have that list, then it's like, okay, so what are the things I can actually change? Because in reality, there are some things we don't have control over. If you work at a job or your boss is a jerk, and you know, you may not be able to control that, but you have to learn how to control your response to him, let's say. So the things that you can control, and I would say on the top of that list, is obviously your diet, your exercise regimen, and your sleep. As far as we're talking physical health, those are probably the three big key factors in everything, no matter what we're talking about here. Your diet definitely affects your stress level. If you're drinking and living on caffeine all day long, you're secreting adrenaline consistently all day long. And like I said, if you're like the worrier gene, you don't process adrenaline very well. So if you're drinking coffee all day and you're like, why do I always feel stressed out? Why do I always feel stressed out? Well, you got all this excess adrenaline that you can't metabolize fast enough. If you're somebody like Ryan, who's like, hey, he can drink coffee all day, he's kind of okay with it, you know. But it's one of these things. So addressing, like, what are those areas, and then actively maybe choosing one thing to change. So whether that's, I'm going to stop drinking soda all day or coffee all day, I'm going to change over to green tea, or you know, whatever. I'm going to do that for like a week or two, and then I'll add another thing in. Exercise, I'm going to say, what's realistic for me? I'm going to go on a walk every night after dinner.
What about Bob baby steps?
Exactly. And I think people get frustrated with that. But if you tend to be a highly anxious person and you want this big list of to-dos, and you're like, I'm going to do this, you tend not to do it, because eventually it's too much, and it's just like another thing you got to worry about. So don't add excess to your plate. And then sleep. So the research coming out on sleep deprivation is really bad, and people need to sleep, and most people are sleep deprived. And we know that you secrete all your healthy hormones at night, and your nervous system basically revitalizes itself. It actually cleans itself out at night. There's this new lymphatic system within the central nervous system called the glymphatic system that is cleaning your brain out while you sleep. If you don't sleep, you don't get that action, and so you feel more anxious. You're going to have more of those neurochemicals hanging out when they shouldn't. I
think sleep is a whole another episode we need to knock out, because it's just like diet, but sleep and exercise. But sleep is a huge element of stress management. It's that parasympathetic process of just down regulating and getting yourself out of that stressful place. But I think it's completely undervalued, underutilized, underappreciated, understood in society today. And that
if you want to increase your testosterone, if you want to increase your muscle mass, if you want to if you want to decrease your anxiety,
badass,
you have to sleep.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get people to do that sometimes because people can train themselves not to sleep. I got trained in school not to sleep. And sleep became a thing for me. And there are things that can help you sleep, and you can kind of learn that, like melatonin is, the research coming out on melatonin is actually really positive. And it used to be like, oh, don't take melatonin. It'll destroy your bodies. And we're finding now, we're even using it in high doses for Alzheimer's disease, dementias, cancers. It's a really strong, potent antioxidant. Yeah. So sometimes, you can find these things that can help you if your mind is racing. Usually what it is with stress, people's minds race and they can't fall asleep because they can't stop thinking.
We need to cover that.
So we need to stop that.
Yep.
So that sleep is a huge one. What else do you do your entire life where you spend half of your day? You spend half your day awake, half your day asleep. So that would be like telling somebody, you know what, you're just staying awake too much. You need to learn how to stay awake more. That's what, it's kind of like the same deal. So think of sleep and awake as the same thing. Okay. So if those are the basic kind of core values that everyone should have, I would say another really important thing, again, I addressed earlier, is relationship. If you have crappy relationships in your life, all these things are going to be really hard. If I tell a patient, you need to change your diet, you need to quit eating gluten, you need to do this, and she's like, my husband won't do any of that. My husband won't listen to me. My husband is not very supportive of me doing that. She's not going to do it.
Yeah.
And
dude, that's another podcast too, because cutting toxic relationships out of your life, or at least limiting them or putting up boundaries, those are huge life skills, I think, that are completely underutilized as well.
And that can be very difficult for people because imagine, I've been married for 20 years. I still have problems with my relationship. We are not perfect. We still have communication issues after 20 years. But I would say that we work on it. Yeah. I would say that Ryan's learned to deal with me. I learned.
Do you have a book or something that on boundaries or relationships that you can think of?
Oh, gosh. I could give you, I'll think of some and you can put it in the show notes. I think this is actually what I think about healthy relationships is that most of the time people are afraid to express what they need. They're just afraid because maybe early on in their life they were shut down or they just never had the support to do that. And I think sometimes it's really about both parties giving up their pride.
Yeah.
And just saying, let's get real. Let's just be real, right? And I think that there's a lot of secrecy and things that are held back. And it's not because you want to hold it back. It's because you're afraid to tell someone who you really are. And this is literally in marriages that are decades old. People live with these fears and these worries and they don't express it. Now, there are some men or women are the same way. You go express your feelings to them and they're just they blow you off. I would say if that's something that's continually happening in your life, you need to rethink that relationship. And that's only because that relationship is causing you chronic stress. It is causing you to secrete stressful neurochemicals that are affecting your health. And if you're somebody who can blow that stuff off, maybe it's not a big deal for you. But if you're like the majority of the population who's ruminating about how their life sucks, that is not going to help you. So I think if you can get two people to come together and get real and just be like, here's the deal.
But I think that takes a lot of trust.
It takes so much trust. It takes
a lot of trust. That means both of those people need to be working on basically their own moral fortitude, their own character, their own, because it's not easy to put your trust in someone. Like if someone really knows what you're really like, Hillary, deep down, because we're all pretty damn flawed. It's like, okay, that's hard to share, and vice versa. And what if I tell the person the truth about who I am and what I'm about, and tell the truth about I'm just a really flawed person. What if that person then says, "Oh, I want out," or "I don't want to be part of this," and stuff. And
I think that's the fear of what the other person is how they're going to react. I think that defensiveness is the big thing, is that our nature, the fight or flight nature, if we're talking about stress here, is the minute you feel like you're being attacked, you come back. You come back as, I am going to defend myself. You can't attack me. And this is where I think most people are just not taught how to communicate. I know I wasn't taught that well how to communicate. I was taught to fight for what I need, fight for what I want, get what I need by like, until you're like, you freak out, And I know some people leave the room. They have to disassociate a little bit. Like, everyone has their triggers. So I think that getting real with your relationship is very important.
Yep.
And it causes a lot of stress. And like I said, that this is actually probably your whole lifetime you're going to be working on these things, because you're not only going to have a spouse, you're going to have work relationships, you're going to have friends, you're going to have children. You have to.
I'll tell you, some of the best decisions I made were work related, where I left a position because or took myself, because people need to make money. A guy's got to support his family. So he's in this workplace, and the person that they're working with is toxic and abusive and destructive. And they'll stay in that job for 10 years because basically, Hillary, on the other side of their life, they bought things that they didn't really want to impress people they didn't really care about. And so now they have all this debt that they can't hardly handle. They have no savings. They're paycheck to paycheck. So they feel trapped in this job that they can't afford to walk away from, because then they lose everything. And they're with a boss or an individual that's completely toxic. It makes them feel like a loser day after day at work. And it's a combination of a lot of things that contribute to that toxic relationship and staying in it. And ways to get out of that is manage your debt, get rid of all that debt, get some savings so you have flexibility, and walk away from that a-hole that treats you that way, and go to some place where people value you and respect your contributions and want to build you up and make you a better person. Get out of those relationships. But sometimes they're not that easy to get out of, because you've trapped yourself because of other choices you've made. But I agree.
A lot of people are trapped. A lot of people feel trapped, and that's part of the stress response. We know that if you trap an animal in a cage and it knows it's going to keep getting shocked every time it walks over and touches that wall, it will develop chronic stress, like cortisol and everything, the glucocorticoids will all be chronically high. That's basically what this person is living in. He's living in a cage where he's constantly getting zapped. Now he goes home to his wife, who wants to actually have a discussion with him about something that he should be discussing with her, like the children, the finances. Yeah. And what does he do? He either ignores her and has a drink and sits down on the couch and ignores her because he's stressed, and he's trying to turn off that sympathetic system by having a drink of alcohol, which turns on the parasympathetic, right? Which is why a lot of people drink, is because it's parasympathetic stimulation. Or he blows up at her. Right. And he freaks out. I don't want to talk about this. I got enough stress. I don't need to deal with you now too, right? So now she feels like she can't trust him. She can't talk to him. And it's like everybody in your life is affected by that guy at work that's zapping you because he's just some jackass who didn't have friends when he was young, and he's got to have that.
One of the things that makes it easier too in a situation like that is to me is to, you take extreme ownership of your life, and you start working with that person more directly. But it's liberating to be able to say, you know what, I'm not going to subject myself to you anymore. You're toxic, and I'm out. Yeah. And often, if you think about what's the worst that can happen, what's the worst thing that's going to happen to you if you do XYZ action, 90% of the time, it's really not that bad. It's like, oh.
And even if it is, you go into bankruptcy, maybe you lose your nice house and you're happier.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You're happier.
At the end of the day, it's actually not that bad what you did. What you dealt with.
Yeah, you know, hey, tell your wife, let's sell our house, go get in an RV and just travel around.
At least now you have your dignity. Yeah, it's funny. Like I've been watching, I like to follow Adam Greentree's adventures.
Oh, I know, he's great.
And he's traveling all over Australia just with his family and his little rig. And they're going all over and stuff. And I do that all summer with my kids this last year.
Yeah.
And family. And it's super cool to have that freedom and to be able to live that way. And you realize when you start doing that you just don't need all the trappings in life that people think you need or that our culture tells you need. So,
well, I've been there. I tell Ryan all the time. When we started the Hunt Harvest Health podcast, I was like, why don't we just sell our house, buy an RV? Our kids are homeschooled anyways, right? Like, we just live in an RV and we'll go around, we'll podcast, we'll meet people, because we're 45, we're running out of time, right?
Hey man, I'm all about that.
And he's like, yeah, that sounds like fun. You know, he's imagining being in an RV with us the whole time.
I know.
But we are attached to talk about attachments. You know, we are attached to our land. You know, we're attached to our garden. We're attached to our animals. We're attached to these things, and they're kind of the same deal. We've created these attachments that are very healthy for us, and we promote this way of life. But in a lot of ways too, sometimes it's stressful, right? You can't just pick up and leave.
Like I said earlier, everything you own owns a little bit of you.
Everything, and so it's one of those things where is it a stress that's improving your life, or is it a stress that's depleting your life? Mm-hmm. And I think the scenario you talked about is that's a very depleting place to be, and it's disturbing all your relationships. You know, and kind of like when you mentioned Adam, it's like. Most people, watching him on Instagram and seeing him do all those wonderful things, and most people probably could do that if they just figured out how to do it.
Oh yeah,
and Adam live really simply. I can't.
He built his own little shack, kind of like Suzanne and I built our treehouse, right?
Yeah,
we build these, and they live in a modest place with minimal running electricity, water, and stuff like that, and it's a lifestyle that they've chosen. And I get this all the time, I couldn't do that. I could never live in a treehouse. I mean, I couldn't drive that car. I can't do that. I can't leave this job.
Yeah.
And they're in so many ways they're envious of the lifestyle you've chosen, but then they can't let go of the material things and the perceived value of the lifestyle that they've built for a different lifestyle, for a different life. And so I get a lot of this, I wish I could hunt, 3 months out of the year instead of, work like I do. And the reality is, you can trade in a lot of, I think, what you have today for different things that you value more. It's just a decision you have to make. It's just a choice.
Yeah. And how lucky are we to have that decision?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, there's lots of places still in the world. You don't have that decision. You can't just maybe I should do this.
We're talking about a unique, United States, Canada kind of a thing where we're in a wealthy country like we have and in a country that's relatively new still with ample land and things like that, in a culture that accepts this sort of thing. Yeah, it's a pretty special special time to be alive. We talk about, a lot of doomsayer kind of stuff with culture today, but the reality is we're blessed. We really are. Man,
I think that's how, if you, like you said, you kind of wake up each day with that blessing and that gratitude. Maybe it's not your best day of your life, but
they're all best days.
It's a new day. It's a new day, and I can, do the best that I can do today. And I think that's part of the stress response too, is it's just looking inside, and taking that note of what's going on inside you on any given day and how it's affecting your health. How are you feeling? How are your thoughts making you feel? And I think that that's a big thing. I think another one is obviously in this community, I think that you guys will get this, but I think there's 3 things that are really important. One is nature. I don't think people are getting enough exposure to nature, and that they're not getting enough darkness, and like that circadian rhythm is just so screwed up with modern day lights everywhere. And noise pollution in the city and all these kinds of things that we're exposed to. So I think really getting into nature, whether it just be going on a retreat somewhere. Like I went to a treehouse in Mount Rainier. My girlfriend had it years ago, had a birthday party there, and it was like this treehouse, like way up. I don't know if you've ever been there, but beautiful. It was really neat. This bridge. I'm totally scared of heights. So that was like really hard for me to walk across this bridge between these 2 trees, huge cedar trees. But stuff like that, even if it's something like that, or it's going hunting, it's just being part of the cycle of nature. Going camping on the weekend at the river or something. Those things.
They're big.
Nature is so vital for our health. It really is, and I think that's why we're kind of attached to our way of life, is because we do get to look out the window and see greenery and see the mountains, and we get to go out and we get to touch our food, and we get to experience that. I think I know that for myself, that's a very important piece of health, and for decreasing stress. There are studies of like going in a garden and just digging in the dirt, and how that will decrease your stress hormones. Working in your yard, being outside, and then obviously the thing of vitamin D exposure, which we haven't seen the sun in a few days here, weeks, I don't know. The Pacific Northwest, and you're in Colorado and the gorgeous sun. I'm so jealous. So this time of year, I don't feel as good as I feel in the summer. It's just how it is. And so thinking about those nutrient things, like making sure you're getting enough vitamin D in the darker months and that kind of thing. But nature is super vital. For decreasing stress hormone. The other thing is taking a break from technology. Technology is awesome, because like you and I would not be able to have this conversation with you in Colorado and me in Washington if we didn't have technology. But we are literally nowadays bombarded from the time we're young. My 2-year-old knows how to get into my phone. Like we are bombarded with technology, and we know that the PEMF, like people think I might be whatever. It's true. We have here at my office where I'm at right now, I could turn on my cellular, tell you how many wireless signals are flying through my office right now from all the other buildings around. And then we all have a little computer in our hands with our phone. We are being bombarded by this, and these do change your neurochemicals. They do disturb your circadian rhythm. They do mess up your stress hormones. And so I think, what do they call it? Technology,
sabbatical
is, and maybe that's why nature's so important, and going out on these trips and hunts and getting away from the lights, getting away from the computers, getting away from that, is because genetically, how long has this stuff been around? Our bodies are just not really built for this. Right. And so it's very stressful in our system, and biochemically and emotionally. So give that. And then I think the third thing in that group would be to just give yourself a break. Literally, like I said earlier, just give yourself a break, and just accept that you're a human with flaws and things that you've done wrong in your life, and you can't be happy all the time, and give yourself a break and just relax and enjoy it. Go on a vacation, take the time for yourself. Hug your kids a little bit more, make yourself a healthy meal and enjoy it. And I think that giving yourself a break is one of the best things that you can do to kind of start this whole ball rolling. But I would say that's super important. And then, there's all kinds of techniques. I used to be a yoga teacher for years, so I think breathing is super important. That's where I used to listen to Brian McKenzie, Laird Hamilton, Wim Hof, all those guys have done all that stuff. And a bunch of I think that breath is learning to breathe. And, Suzanne's super lucky to have you sitting there, walking her through a stress reduction activity. I think there's ample amounts of content out there in the world where people can learn, stress reduction activities and breathing alone. There is a reason yoga, whatever you want to call it, the practice of yoga has survived for thousands of years. Not just yoga, but Qigong and Tai Chi and jujitsu and martial arts, karate, all these things, because you're using your body with your breath, and the breath is life. And we have these electrical systems within us. It's our nervous system that is totally respondent to the breath. And
it's crazy.
That's why people have been practicing these things for millennia. So our prayer is the same thing, speaking, chanting, singing, that's music, all these things. This is why music is also the universal language. No matter where you live, no matter what language the music is in, everybody feels music in their body. And that's why I think too, music can be so stress relieving. So anything where music's involved, sound is involved, and breath is involved. I think that those are all really important things.
Well, I think that's good. It gives us all kind of some starting points on where to work on stress. It's a
world you're navigating. You got to navigate this world today, and we do live longer. Sometimes we have that horrible quality of life, but we are living longer. So, like I said, it's important to listen to yourself. And
But I think this is a good. I think it wakes people up to this kind of silent killer that's out there, this stress thing that's just out there, in your life that you don't pick up on, that's slowly wrecking you. And it's really an issue where you got to stop and take stock on your life and what you want. And that's really a big part of it. So
a great way, and just one last thing, I think a great way for people to, sometimes they say, well, how do I assess how much stress I'm actually under? Right? Because I think a lot of people are just used to it. They don't notice. One great way to know is how you actually respond to a stressor, and how long after the stressor happens are you affected. And that could be something as simple as, what happens to you when a cop lights come on behind you and a cop pulls you over? What happens initially for everybody is there's a bit of an adrenaline response, and we're all like, oh no, right? We get stressed out. The cop comes up, we have this activity, interaction. If you don't have a warrant and get handcuffed and put in the back of the cop car, most of us are just like, okay, go on with your day.
Right.
How long does it take you to calm down from that experience?
Okay.
Because that is a natural stressful experience that everyone will have. The fight or flight kicks in.
There's a confrontation. There's a...
Yes. And then it's over. But then how long does it take you to calm down from that experience? Does it take you 10 minutes? Does it take you 2 hours?
Right.
And this can give you a clue of maybe how stressed out you are.
Yeah.
And I think that
I start doing an Instagram. I usually start doing an Instagram story right away, make a few jokes about it, and I forgot about it before I even talked to the cop. And then when the cop's gone, I mean, in general, but there are times where I don't think that this is a solid state you achieve and then you're good. There are times in my life, like, where certain things happen, like Suzanne's cancer, for example, which when I got pulled over by a cop, I'm in a different state than I am maybe today because of all this other stuff. Like, you're on this constant roller coaster, and sometimes you're handling stress really well because you're doing all the right things to manage it. And then sometimes it spins out of control. You're up here in a place where it's really negative. You're in a really bad place, and these things, you can't handle them. And
that's exactly a great way to assess what are the lifestyle factors that are now causing me to have this response, and how do I address them? Because this is creating poorer health than better health.
It's a daily roll call. It's not something that you achieve. You're like, Zen, now I'm here. Now the rest of life is smooth sailing.
But it's a consistent. So if you got, like, Suzanne has cancer, that's going to be a long-term thing. You're going to be worrying a long time. So that response, and you can say, okay, I get it. This isn't going to be forever. But if you're consistently having that again, do you have something going on in your life that it may not be your wife cancer, but something is stressing you out.
Right.
Something is pushing you to the point where you cannot recover.
Yeah.
And so that's an important assessment tool to look at. But, I just thought I'd throw that in there.
I like it. Thanks, Hillary. I appreciate every time you come on. Let's hammer out another one soon. And stay gritty.
Appreciate it, gritty.
For people out there, follow Hillary and Ryan. Go to Hunt Harvest Health Instagram and subscribe to the podcast. There's lots of great info there. And thank you.
Okay.
All right. See you guys. Bye.
See ya.
Despite our ever-changing, ever-indignant world with its growing ignorance of and indifference to the ways of the wild, I remain a predator, pitying those who revel in artificiality and synthetic success while regarding me and my kind as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood. I stalk a real world of dark wood and tall grass stirred by a restless wind blowing across sunlit water and beneath star-strewn sky. And on those occasions when I choose to kill, to claim some small part of nature's bounty for my own, I do so by choice, quickly, with the learned efficiency of a skilled hunter. Further, in my heart and mind, I know the truth and make no apologies for my actions or my place in time. Others around me may opt to eat only plants, nuts, and fruits. Still others may employ faceless strangers to procure their meats, their leather, their feathers, and all those niceties and necessities of life. Such is their right, of course, and I wish them well. All I ask in return is no one begrudge me, and all of us who may answer the primordial stirrings within our hunter souls, my right to do some of these things myself. What you just heard is a quote from M.R. James. We truly live in a world that is largely ignorant and indifferent to the ways of the wild. And although some regard us as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood, we have the opportunity to change the way these people view the hunter and the hunt. We can share our experiences and nature's bounty with those who employ these faceless strangers. And by so doing, we make a difference, not just for ourselves, but for the wild animals in the wild places we care so deeply about. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting and the outdoors. Our wild animals and our wild places depend on it.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.